Hi, I'm Owen Moorhead. Have you ever been walking through a park during the winter and heard a high pitched whistle before? That very well could have been a waxwing. Ohio has two species of waxwing that are present within the state, those being the bohemian waxwing and the cedar waxwing, which can be difficult to identify when birding. The two birds can be difficult to tell apart at a glance, but if you take the time, the differentiation can become relatively easy. Aside from their similar appearance, they share similar behavior, which adds to the difficulty of identifying them. However, the birds vary in location, which can ease the identification process, but today I'll be mainly focusing on the visual identification using photos to help. When birding, you must take certain steps to identify these birds. The first thing you'll notice is that their plumage is a similar gray color with a black mask and a yellow tail band, and the bright red tips on the secondary wing feathers. And to just show you how similar they look, these are the two side by side. But the bohemian waxwing has a brighter contrast between the gray-brown colors on the face, and you can see that right there. It almost looks like as if they have blush on them. Now, comparing the two side by side, it should be a little bit more clear now with the blush. But moving on to their tails, the bohemian waxwing has a more extensive and brighter coloration on the tail. The yellow tail band extends to the tip of the tail and onto the underside, while the cedar waxwing's yellow band is restricted to the upper tail and it doesn't extend to the tip. And as a picture right here, the yellow tail band extends to the tip and it goes on the underside of it. You can also see it on the front right there. And like I said, the cedar waxwing has a yellow tail band, but it doesn't go all the way to the tip, and it really doesn't go on the underside. Aside from the plumage differences, there's a more reliable method to tell the two apart. That's by comparing the size of the two birds. The bohemian waxwing is noticeably larger with a total length of 8.5 to 9.5 inches, compared to the cedar waxwings, which is about 6.5 to 7.5 inches. If the birds are in flight, the bohemian waxwings have a wingspan of 12.6 to 15.7 inches, and the cedar waxwings have a wingspan of 11 to 12 inches. So if they're together, much easier. But if you see a group of waxwings, it's good to know the general behavior and the diet differences. So the main difference in their diet is that the bohemian waxwing, compared to the cedar, they prefer more insects and a berry diet, while the cedar waxwing will eat insects, but they prefer mainly berries. But the vocalizations sound almost identical, which marks that off of our list of identification tools, but we still have the visual cues that can steer us in the right direction. The two birds flock similarly, yet so different that it allows us to pick them apart. The cedar waxwings are very social when they form very large flocks during the non-breeding season, and the flocks can get up to the hundreds of birds. Bohemian waxwings, on the other hand, they tend to travel in smaller flocks of around 20 to 30 birds during their non-breeding season. And just to show you the extent of their flocks, this is a smaller flock of the cedar waxwing. But it's also important to note that Bohemian waxwings are less likely to mingle in flocks of mixed birds and try to stay with other waxwings. This is unlike the cedar waxwings, however, which are known to associate with different species of songbirds and mixed foraging flocks. In conclusion, as similar as these birds are, they can still be defined by certain characteristics each of them have. Will they all look the same? No, of course not, but that still won't stop us from being able to identify them. I hope after learning the defining differences that make up the two types of birds that you'll be able to distinguish them on your own. Thank you for listening.